Hi, this is Danny. I am taking you through two videos here to supplement Terry's activity videos. I want to make sure you're set up with the skills you need to complete the Module 6 assignment. I am not sure that the activities take you through all of the different things you're going to hit on the assignment. What you're looking at in front of you is the Access database with 5 tables, including the showings table. Mine has 2 records in it. And I have intentionally not joined the showings table in the relationship tool to show you the error message you're going to get if you haven't joined it or if you've joined it incorrectly. And we'll go back and we'll join it properly, and then we'll move on with building the forms. Starting to build a form, we are asked by the assignment to build a form with a subform, and in fact make it a listings form with a showings subform. And that makes sense if you think about it. Each listing, each house this agency has for sale could have many showings. An agent could show it today, tomorrow, the next day, but any given showing is only going to be for one house. Granted, an agent could take a client to see several houses, but the system would consider that each a separate showing. What we're going to do to create a form with a subform, and again, I'm going to have to restart this, but I'm going to show you the error message that will come up. We'll go to Form Wizard. We will select all of the fields we want for our form and subform together. So we want all the fields from listings. We'll eventually take a few of these out, but let's start by putting all of them, all the fields from listings in. I used the double caret to move all the fields over. I do not click on next at this point. Rather, I go to the pull down again, select all the fields from showings. I select the showings table and move over all of the fields from showings. So now I have all the fields for both in here. In fact, let me undo that because I want to show you again a type of error message. Actually, I gotta do that for what I want to be showing you first here. I have all the showings in here, and I lost all my listings. I'll bring the listings back. Okay, so I have the fields from both those tables here. I click on next. I hit an error message, and if you see this error message, you have chosen fields from these tables, showings, listings. One or more tables isn't related to the other. If I click on OK, it's going to take me right to the relationship tool. Let me go to it manually. So I'll cancel out of this. Go to Database Tools, go to Relationship Tools. I have the relationships, I have all the tables set up here nicely, but I have no relationship between showings and anything else. So that's why I got the error message when I click Next after adding all my fields. And I'll go to create the relationships here. I know listing number and listing ID are both data type number. I know they're essentially the same thing. And I know that I want to click on enforce referential integrity, and that will create my one-to-many relationship. And as I said earlier, for each listing there can be many showings, but for each showing there's only going to be one listing. And then I need to create a relationship between agents and showings, and I'll take agent ID and connect it to agent ID. I've previously checked to make sure each of these are data type text. If I don't have the same data type, I will get an error message here when I try to create the relationship. I clicked Enforce Referential Integrity, and it creates a one-to-many relationship. Now remember, for our purposes for the showings, and maybe this isn't to remember, maybe this is the first time. For the purposes of our showing, the agent who is showing the property is not necessarily the listing agent. So it could be a different agent showing the property. And so while an agent can have several listings, and a listing could have several agents associated with it. That's why we had a many-to-many relationship. We're resolving with a associative table, and there's a point in the discussion board from Module 5 that I recorded today, Sunday the 7th, where I discussed this. You can read about that in the discussion board, exactly what's going on with this associative table. But we've got something different happening here. In this case, each agent can show a property many times. Right? The agent could show it today, tomorrow, the next day, but each showing is only going to have one showing agent, one agent who's showing the property. So we have a one-to-many relationship here. And it's a different relationship than the listing agent relationship, which is what's being listed over on, being managed over on the left over here. So now that I have these two new relationships in place, I have to remember to save the relationships. I can right click and click on save. I could have clicked on save in the upper left. Now that the relationships are saved, I can close this, close it here, either way. And I'm back to the beginning. I'm back looking at my tables, and I want to create, again, my form using the form wizard. And once again, I'll bring in all the fields from listings. Now, I'm going to do it wrong again for you here, just to show you what happens. If I don't remember to bring in my fields from showings, and I click on next, it doesn't ask me whether I want to create a form and a subform. That just isn't an option here. And you might get to this point and wonder, well, why can't I create a subform? Why is this not working for me? Well, go back. You need to have fields from two tables, and the tables have to have a one-to-many relationship. And if you don't have that, it's not going to give you the choice of creating a subform on the next tab, the next window you see. So what I'm going to do here is select table showings, select all the fields with the double greater than. Now I've got all the fields for both listings and showing available to me selected. I click on next, and I'm going to see now what I want to see. I have a choice of linked forms or form with subform. And on assignment 6, you're creating a form with subform. And it's asking me, which do you want to have as the main form and which do you want to have as a subform? It's asking me in the terms by listing or by showing, but it shows it to me here pictorially. Listing is on the outside, and inside this box is the showing, the fields from showing. So it's going to put showing on the subform box inside the big listing box. Notice if I pick the other choice here, this goes away because I can't arrange showings as a main form and listings as a subform because it isn't a one-to-many relationship, it's a many-to-one relationship, and Access knows that that isn't going to work. And really, there's only one way to get this right. You got to pick by listing. You're not going to see form with subform unless you do that. And we click on next. And now it asks us, do we want all our fields in tabular form or datasheet form? Well, datasheet is like a spreadsheet. It's going to be fixed rows and columns. It's like the datasheet view for a table. Tabular is going to give us fields that we can move around and manipulate and create a customized looking form. And in fact, that's what you want for this assignment. Now, I believe Terry had set up an activity, set up some other things where she had the subform as a data sheet. We don't want it that way. We want it as tabular. The assignment isn't going to work unless you pick tabular here. And we can now click next. And now it gives us names, default names. I've done this already. The first time it asked me, it suggested I name the form listings and the subform showing subforms. Those were logical names. Because I've done this already and those two forms exist in my database, it's suggesting listings 1 and subforms 1. I'm just going to take that. I could go in immediately and modify the design, or I can take a look at what it gives us by default. Let's take a look at what it gives us by default. So it really doesn't matter here. We're going to have to go in and modify it anyway in a moment, but let's take a look at it. So I'll click on Finish, and what does it do for me here? It's taken a few seconds to do its stuff, and now it's showing me, now this is in form view. This is the way the user would see it. These are presumably finished forms, although you're going to see they're a bit ugly. And they're not, we can change data, we can create new records, but we can't move fields around. We can't change the look and feel of the form itself from this view. And in fact, there's 3 views. Remember with tables, we had datasheet view and design view. There were a few other views we weren't using. With forms, there's basically 3 views. I'm going to click on the down arrow here to see the 3 views. Form view, layout view, design view. So we're in form view. Again, this is the finished end user view. Layout view is set up to allow us to basically rearrange the layout of the structures, and it's going to give us some nice tools to do that. And pretty much what you can do in layout view, you can also do in design view. I tend to do most all of my work in design view. Design view gives you lots of control to design lots of detail about the form. Technically, you're supposed to use layout view to organize the layout, move things around. In design view, to change the properties of individual fields and look and feel of individual fields. But you basically can work in design view. But you've got these three views. Layout view, I'm going to click on it here. It doesn't look all that much different than form view. I click on the subform. This is the subform here. And it just shows me the subform. And I think I can move the subform as a whole, but it doesn't let me do much of anything in, well, maybe it will even let me, yeah, it even lets me move some things in the subform. And it also brings up the property sheet. So whatever object I have highlighted, whatever object is in control, it shows me the properties for that object. Right now I've got agent ID in control, and that's, or at least the label for it, the text that says, here's your agent ID. And so it's giving me all of the properties, and I can manually go in and change the properties, or I can drag and drop things around here. One of the properties is going to be the height, I believe, and as I change that, here's the height, the fourth property down, about 0.45 inches, and notice as I change it here, the property, there we go, to 0.65 inches. The property is changing there. This is how far it is from the top of the form, and of course as I change it, the top is gonna move as well. So I basically have customized control. You can see I got this stuff 4 decimal points of an inch, smaller than the eye can see. Or I can just drag and drop and move things around here. So I can manipulate the subform a bit. We get a lot more control over the subform if we bring up the subform as its own object. We're looking at tables here. I can just change that to look at forms. And I recall I said I previously had done this. I have listings in showing subform. The new ones I've just created now are listings 1. There you see listings 1 and subform 1. Well, we're looking at listings 1, which has the subform embedded, but we can bring up the subform itself right here. And notice what I changed over here in listings. Well, I haven't saved it yet, so it's sitting there the way it was before. Let me close that. Let me save here, and I'll see what happens. I save, and now when I open the subform, the agent ID label should be a little bit higher than it was before. There it is. It moved up. So once I saved it, it updated on here. The next thing that I want to point out to you is by default, let's minimize the main form here and just look at the subform. First of all, the subform, I've counted, it's 22 inches wide. It's way too wide to fit on a sheet of paper, let alone in that little box on my screen inside of the form. We're going to have to do something about that 22 inches width. The other thing that's going on is it's just row after row after row. It's listing each showing as its own row on the same page. And if you look at the picture of the solution from the assignment, every showing had its own page, and you would basically step through here from page to page to page to see each showing. So we're going to want to change that as well. So let's do some of that here. To change from a list view to a page view, I'm going to need the properties sheet up. I can get to the properties sheet a couple of ways. I could just click on the background here. I think double click, it'll bring it up. Does it bring it up? And no, that didn't do it. Let me go back to where I was. I could right click and no, that didn't bring it up. I could click on a property itself. Oh, well, it's not bringing it up probably because of the view I'm in. I'm in form view. But if I was in design or layout view, it would probably bring it up. Let's try that. Let's try that. Yeah, it came up right when I came into it. I moved to design view here. In design view, there's also a toggle right up here for property sheet. That's one way to bring it up. The other way again is just double click on something in design view, and I think that'll work in layout view as well. So what I want to do first of all is the form as a whole. I'm going to click on the bar on top to get the form as a whole. Let's try that again. Well, didn't quite take that, but I'm going to have to get it over here. So let me go to the form. Here it is, form. And the form as a whole, I'm now looking at the properties for this whole form. Let me show you that again. Here are all the different objects inside of the subform, including the form itself. So I clicked on the form itself. You notice there's 5 different tabs here. There's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of things that you have the ability to go in and customize. And really, pretty much everything you'd want to customize, you got the ability to customize here. Format is what came up by default. And notice the second row here is the default view for the form. It's continuous forms, row after row after row, each record of a new showing. I want to change that to each page, and I'm going to change it to single form so that each page we look at is going to be basically a single record. Or a form holds a single record is a way of saying that. And you can see there's a variety of other views. You want to play around with this. It's worth taking a little bit of time and trying out different things here and seeing what it looks like. For right now, I'm going to change it to single form because that's what you're going to need for the assignment. It does not change until we save and close and reopen. So now I'm going to save the subform, close the subform, reopen the subform, and now instead of row after row after row, we got one record. We've got, and if we go to the next page, it's a record per page now going through. But it's still 22 inches wide, and it's still not very tall. But the solution, and here's really what you're aiming for. This is the solution that was showing up on the assignment. It looks to be about, I haven't measured this, but looks to be, we could measure this. It looks to be about 4 inches wide, 4 inches tall. Let's see. 5 inches wide or so, and bring that down a little farther. Yeah, 5 inches wide, 4 inches tall, something like that. So that's really what you're aiming for, and we gotta reformat this. So let's do that in Design View. I'm going to, again, multiple ways of getting into Design View. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to choose Design View. I know I'm in Design View because I've got the dotted background. I'm going to pull this down just so we can see the height of the whole form, and then let me go all the way 22 inches over to the right. Well, that's really, well, we can't even get all the way over there. Let me close property. Let me bring it all the way over here, and you can see 22 inches. That's the far right. But I've got fields all the way over here going 22 inches. I'm going to have to move my fields around. So let's come back over all the way to the left as far as we can go here. And let's see what we got to work with. Well, I'm going to need some more height. So let me first give myself a bigger window to work with. The form itself, though, is 2 inches tall or so. It's maybe 3/4 of an inch of the header, and then it looks like a little under an inch of detail view, and there's no footer. First of all, if I wanted a footer, and in this assignment you don't need a footer in the form, I can just grab the bottom of that footer bar and drag it down, and you can see from the dotted background I'm giving myself a footer. I'm giving myself here a space of about an inch, and I could start putting summary fields in here, page number fields, or something that would make sense, copyright notice, something that would make sense to go into a footer. But I don't need that in this assignment, so I'll close that back up. I do need detail to be much taller, so we go to the top of the footer bar. You can see what my icon looks like here, my mouse arrow looks like, and I drag that down as far as we want it. Let's drag it to about there. I may want to come back. Oh, let's come back to maybe there. And now I got more vertical height to work with, and I could make the header shorter, except I've got all these fields sitting right behind it here. First of all, let me fix that agent ID. The way we can change the size of any field, whether it's a label or whether it's actually a form field, you can see there's 6 little orange squares here. When I click on an object, I'm just going to grab this one in the center, drag it down, and that'll make it about the same height. I can measure to get it exactly the same height. I can also use some layout tools that'll help me do that. And to do that, I'll come over to this Format tab. So let me digress for a moment here. We've got we've got three views we're working with, and you can see there's actually more than three views that exist. We're working with form view, layout view, and design view. You can see here if we want to build a chart, there's a chart view. If we want to build a pivot table, we got a view for that. Or if it's a data sheet, we got a view for that. And right now we're in design view. I'll stay there. And then in layout view and in design view, we have three different tabs, functions, three different ribbon tabs that do three different kinds of things. Arrange is basically how we're going to get objects to relate to one another. And it's tools similar to what you might see in PowerPoint. We can align objects to the left, to the top, well, you can see I'll pull this down. We can align it to the grid, left, center, right, bottom. If we had more than one object selected, we would get a choice to align them. If things are in front of or behind others, objects are in front or behind other objects, we can change the visual order. It's called a Z order. It's the Z axis, and we can also change the amount of spacing there is with each of these objects. So we've got ability to do a whole bunch of things here. We can choose how we're going to anchor the objects to the form itself. And I'm not going to teach you all these things, or we are going to have a 45-minute or an hour-long video here. But you see that they exist. You see they're on the Arrange tab. And the thing about the Arrange tab is organizing the relationships among the different objects. You can also do this stuff from the Design tab too. I'm sorry, you can do some of this manually even if you're in Design View. I can be in Design View and still move this around. But Format View gives you some tools for doing it specifically. I'm sorry, Arrange View does that. Format View is the view that looks a lot like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, where you can change the font size and colors, change the background color. So for example, if I want the background, instead of being light blue, let's say I want the background to be, let's make it light green, I can go to Shape Fill and do this. I also could go to the properties over here and back color, and I can pick any hexadecimal color here and set it like that, or I can pick a number of system defaults. So I got choices over here as well, and I can manage it from over here, but I can use the I can use the format ribbon in the design view. We're in Design View. To change the background colors, I can come down to the main detail area, change the background color here if I wanted to. So you get the idea, I think. Notice that the form fields themselves have a background color of white. I could change them. Here, let's make this one pinkish. So I can change it if I want to change it, but by default they are white. And you saw in my solution I made everything background white. You may get fancier and do something different. Notice that the labels have a background that's transparent by default, but you can give a label a background color as well if you wanted to. I'm just going to undo that. You also have the ability to change the text color. I chose a darker blue than was there to start with, and you can change in the labels, you can change the text because you really just want something here that's meaningful, and sometimes text different than the field name is more meaningful. For the fields themselves, if you change this text, you're changing the field. You probably don't want to be changing that text. We can, and in fact we're going to have to, you're going to have to for the assignment, move the labels out of the header view and over here to the form detail view. And in fact, here we go, buyer's agent, and the first name and the last name. And if we want to line this up, I can make this label smaller. I can make this the same height. I could have done, but here I can do both of these at the same time. I'm holding down the Shift key, clicking on that. The other thing I can do is I can just run the mouse over the two of them. And once I've got them both selected, I can change the heights at the same time, bring them both over here. I don't have those heights lined up perfectly with label, but I'm pretty close. And in fact, these are too wide, wider than I want them to be. So I'll get over that little hook, make them smaller, and then just select the last name and bring it over. And if I'm not sure that I've got the height lined up properly, again, I can select the three objects. I can go to Arrange, and I can align. I'm going to align bottom in this case to bring the third one down. If I align top, it'll bring the other two up. So I bring the third one down, and now the bottoms are exactly the same. They may not all be the same height, but the bottoms are exactly the same. If I want this to be, let me just make it a little wider so you can see. If I want this to be right justified instead of left justified, I'll go to Format, and just like I could in Microsoft Word, I can right justify it. So I've got all those controls and many more. You can start playing around in the ribbons and see what you can do. Now what I need to do is I need to bring these fields over in order to make the whole form less than 22 inches wide. Notice there's two things going on here. The scroll bars are from my palette. It's for this frame on the screen, but the actual form is what's in the dotted lines. And let me bring over, let's just bring all three of those fields over at once. Move them on down. And with the labels, do the same thing. I'm going to select these labels. I'm going to drop them down to the detail area, move them over, select just the last three, and bring those three down under the other ones. So I've just shoved everything down to under 8 inches for now. I'll scroll back over to the right on my window. In my window, again, I can make the window, well, I can't get the window any wider than that, can I? Notice when I come all the way over to the far right edge of the form, my mouse cursor changes. I can left click, and I can just drag the right side of the form over. But now I'm making it 8 inches wide. So even though my window is very wide, the form is now 8 inches at this point. I'll want to make the window smaller. In fact, if I leave the window wide, here's the problem. When I go to look at properties of the form, I'm going to go back to Design. I'm going to select Property Sheet. Now my Properties is over the top of the window, and if I really can't get over to the far right side of it because I got Properties on top of it. So I might as well come all the way over here, make the window smaller, bring it down, make it shorter maybe. And now I got a window that's about the right size for me. And now if I want to look at properties, nothing's getting in the way of anything else here. In the end, you're going to need to get this down to about 4 inches, but you can see the process of that by me getting it down here to 8 inches. Some of these fields and labels you're not going to use if you're going to match what's on the assignment. For example, the ID field, I don't believe I used, so I can delete it. I can either hit the delete key on the keyboard, or I can highlight the field, right click, and there's delete. The delete field goes away, which means we don't need the delete label. Do the same thing there, delete it. So some of these fields will go away, and it'll help you organize and bring everything down to the 4 inches. Again, you've got detailed control over here. Let's look at a particular listing. What is this? Listing ID. I don't recall now whether we need the listing ID, but let's look at it. You can see the shape of the field and the position of the field, the width and the height of the field. You can control this to a 10,000th of an inch, which is pretty detailed. Both the height and the width. You can also control the location within the detail area here, because we're in the detail area, based on the offset from the top and the offset from the left of the detail area. Notice as I move it around, the top and the left are going to change as I let go of it. So we can control that. You're controlling colors. You can just kind of work your way down here and see all the different things you have control over. And again, the data, the masks are what the way you're going to format it, the way data is going to show up on the screen. So lots and lots of detailed control. I think I'm going to leave the subform for a moment. Let's see if there's anything we need to look at on the main form, but we may be pretty much done. I'll minimize this, bring up the main form again. Oh, you can't open a subform, subreport when it's also open in design view. All right, so I can't leave this in design view. And in fact, I do want to point out it's a good idea to be saving these things rather than minimizing. If you did some work, you want to save it. You can save it a couple of different ways. You can right-click and click on Save, same way you were saving tables. You can come up here and save. You can do File, and Save Object, and just save. If you want to create a backup copy, which is not a bad idea after you've put in 45 minutes or an hour of work, backup copy with a different name you can go back to. One thing you might want to do is here, showing subform at 4 p.m. So you could create for yourself fallback positions, and just make sure that the real one you're working with has the real name, because now that I've changed the name of it, it doesn't map back to the main form again. So you can get yourself, let me show you that so you don't get yourself in trouble with that. So now that I save this as subform at 4 p.m., notice it went away because we no longer have a subform 1. So what I need to do then is, now that I saved one as subform at 4 p.m., I need to save it again just as subform 1, not copy of. And because that is the form that it's not showing up there, but that is the form that is being called by the main listings form, unless I've messed up the name in some way or another. But I believe that's it. And I believe that if I close that and reopen it, it's in design view. That's the problem. All right, now we can get out of design view. Let's go to form view and open listings 1, and there it is. But it's only going to call subform 1. So is there anything in the main view that I need to show you? I think we've covered pretty much. We're going to be able to move these fields around as well, change the heading, change the size, color of the heading. But you've got the basics I think you need to go forward with the forms portion of the assignment. I've talked for 31 minutes here. I'm going to give you a much shorter discussion on reports in a next video.